Welcome to the tutorial for the LowStressLife Ultimate Annual and Monthly Budget Spreadsheet. Firstly, thank you so much for purchasing this spreadsheet. I really hope it helps you on your journey to better finances. If you prefer a written explanation, there is also a full written tutorial in the PDF guide as well as a filled-in example of the spreadsheet. Let's get started. You can access your spreadsheet by going to the first page of the PDF guide and clicking the link here to open it. This will take you to Google Sheets, where you should click on File on the top left menu and then Make a copy. This will allow you to save your own version of the spreadsheet. If you do not have the option to make a copy, make sure you are connected to your Google account and that you have enough space in your Google Drive for the spreadsheet to be created there. Now that you have your spreadsheet ready, let's look at each of the tabs. There is a tab to set up your spreadsheet, a tab to prepare your budgets and goals for the whole year, a tab to write all of your transactions, a tab with a calendar to visualize your bills and debt payments, a tab for keeping track of your cash, bank accounts, and credit cards, 12 monthly dashboard tabs and an annual dashboard tab to analyze your income and spending over the year, a savings dashboard tab, a debt dashboard tab, and finally, a tab to visualize your net worth. You can use the arrows on the bottom right of Google Sheets to view the tabs that are hidden. Before we start filling out the spreadsheet, there are 3 very important principles you need to follow. The most important principle is to only write in cells with a colored background: green, pink, purple, yellow, and blue. All other cells in the spreadsheet are automated and should not be changed. You'll actually get a warning if you try to change a cell that does not have a colored background, and if you see this warning, please click on Cancel to continue using the spreadsheet. Secondly, please do not cut and paste any part of the spreadsheet, as this can also cause problems with the spreadsheet's automated calculations. Instead, please use copy and paste to copy data, and then erase the initial data you wrote if necessary. If you realize you cut and pasted a cell, simply use the keys Ctrl-Z or the undo arrow on the top left menu to return to before you made the cut. Lastly, please also avoid adding or deleting rows, as this can also cause problems with automated calculations. Now let's move on to setting up and using your spreadsheet. On the Setup tab, we will first write down the currency we want to use, for example the dollar, and then we can decide on which month this 12-month spreadsheet begins, for example January 2025. Finally, we can choose if we want each week of the bill calendar to start on a Sunday or a Monday. If you choose to start your spreadsheet from another month, for example February, you can move around the tabs at the bottom of the page to the right order. For a February start, move the January tab after the December tab. This way, the tabs are all in the right order for you. Now we will set up our categories, starting with income. Here, you should write down the different sources of income you plan to receive over the next 12 months. I will start with my salary, then my partner's salary, and so on. You can screenshot or pause the next 2 slides for inspiration if you need to. Now, for the fun part, you can customize all of your income sources by matching an icon from the icon library on the right to each income source. This will then update automatically throughout the spreadsheet. Simply select a cell with an icon in it, copy it by using Ctrl-C, then select the cell next to your category and paste it in with Ctrl-V. The checkbox next to each income source allows you to define whether each source of income is active or passive. Active income is earned through effort or output. For example, your salary is active as you have to work actively to get it. Passive income, on the other hand, may need effort to begin with, but then brings income over time with little to no extra work. For example, rental income or stock dividends. And that's it for the income section. The next section is for all of your recurring bills and subscriptions, like your rent, utilities, or streaming subscriptions. Write down the categories you need and choose the icons just like before. Then you have the choice for the checkbox between need or want. Is the bill something you need and you would not be able to function properly without? Or is it something you want and would be fine without? Examples of need categories include rent, utilities, insurance. On the other hand, magazines and streaming subscriptions are good examples of want categories. This will be helpful if you plan on saving money by reducing your spending on things you want but don't need. Next, let's do the same thing for your debt payoff categories. This section will include any debt such as a mortgage, student loans, or credit card debt. One very important note for credit card debt: in this debt section, please only write the credit cards that have accumulated debt due to missed payments and that you must now pay interest on. This section should not include normal monthly credit card repayments. Those you do not have to pay interest on, as this will be covered later in the Setup tab. For the checkbox, high priority debt is the debt you want to pay off as soon as possible, while low priority debt can wait until the high priority debt is paid off. The Debt Dashboard is an optional tab in this spreadsheet designed to help you prioritize and pay off your debt. Here is how to set up the dashboard. First of all, choose a start date for your debt dashboard. If you have debt already, I would recommend using the same start date that you wrote at the top of this tab, in this case, January 2025. If you do not currently have debt but plan to take on debt later in the year, then I would recommend using the month you plan to take on that debt as your start date. Next, fill in the table with each debt starting balance, minimum payment, and annual interest rate. This information will have been provided to you by your bank or other debt provider. The starting balance should show your remaining balance at the starting date you chose above, not the original amount of debt you started with. So for example, my mortgage was originally $150,000 a few years ago, but I paid off some of this before I got this spreadsheet. As of January 1st, 2025, my remaining balance for the mortgage is $125,253, so I wrote that here. My minimum monthly payment for the mortgage is $1,150 and the annual interest is 4.5%. As you fill in the table, you will see the spreadsheet automatically update and show you your total minimum payment at the top. This is the minimum amount you will need to pay each month to fully pay off your debts. If you think you will struggle to contribute more than this amount per month, then write the same amount in the planned monthly payment cell on the right. However, if you would like to allocate more money to your debt payoff in order to pay back your debt sooner, you can write a higher amount in that cell. In this example, I am able to allocate $500 extra a month to my debt payoff, so I write $2,673 in my planned monthly payment cell. Now, on to where the debt dashboard gets even more interesting. Paying off your debt in the right order can help you save a huge amount in the long term. By selecting between 3 methods of debt repayment, the spreadsheet will choose where to allocate the extra money you decided to allocate to your debts each month. In my example, this is the $500 extra I just added. If you choose the snowball method, you will pay off your debts that have the smallest remaining balances first. In this example, the car loan would be the focus first. It would get the $500 extra each month until this debt is paid. And then the credit card would then get the extra $500 each month, then the student loan and the mortgage. The snowball method is designed to motivate you to pay off your debt, as you will be able to pay off your smaller debts faster. If you choose the avalanche method, you will pay off your debts that have the highest interest rates first. In this case, the credit card is the one with the highest interest, then the student loan, the car loan, and then the mortgage. This method is designed to reduce the total amount of money you would have to pay to completely pay off your debt. In this example, the snowball method would allow me to pay back my smallest debt in 7 months instead of 14, helping with my motivation. The avalanche method would allow me to pay around $375 less interest than if I chose the snowball method. I will choose the avalanche method for my example. To summarize, the snowball method provides more of a mental benefit, whereas the avalanche method saves you more money over time. There is a third option, creating your own debt payoff order. If you would like to choose the order in which you pay off your debts by yourself, you can select Custom Order and then write the order in the last column of the table below, starting with 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. This example shows how important the order you pay off debt can be, as the random order I chose makes the repayment of all of my debts 5 months longer and adds almost more than $13,000 in extra interest payments. Once we've filled out this section, it's time to move on to our variable expenses. Variable expenses are all of your expenses that do not occur on specific days each month. For example, groceries, eating out, or household furniture. Simply write the names, choose an icon, and choose if they are a need or a want, just like with your bills and subscriptions. Now, onto your savings categories. This follows the same system as the previous sections above. I have already filled out my savings categories and customized icon. The long-term checkbox is to determine if your savings category is for a long-term goal or a short-term goal. Retirement savings and deposit for houses are good examples of long-term saving goals, while shorter-term goals could include saving for house renovations and holidays. Below this is a section for setting up your savings dashboard. As with the rest of the spreadsheet, please fill in the cells in the table with a yellow-colored background. First, write down your savings targets for each category. Secondly, fill in how much you already saved for each category before you started using the spreadsheet. Here you can see I am saving up for an emergency fund. My savings target is $5,000, and before I started this spreadsheet, I had already saved $1,500, so I have $3,500 left to save. Next, we will write the start date for each category. If you were already saving towards the goal before you started using this spreadsheet, then your start date should be the same start date that you wrote at the top of this tab. In our case, this is January 2025, so I will put January 2025 for my emergency fund that I started saving for a few years ago. If you are planning to start saving later in the year, then write that month as your start date instead. For example, I am planning to save towards a new computer from June onwards, so I will write June as the start date for this category. Lastly, write in the goal date for each savings category. This does not need to be limited to the 12 months in this spreadsheet, and you can write in a goal date up to 50 years in the future if you need to. I am planning to use my winter holiday savings in September this year, but we'll need another year to save enough to reach my emergency fund goal. The next section is for your accounts, meaning your cash, bank accounts, and credit cards. Firstly, write down the name of each account you own, and then write down the amount you have in each of these accounts just before you start the spreadsheet. I had $250 in cash and $5,600 in my Chase bank account before starting the spreadsheet. Credit card accounts are different as these show amounts that you owe your credit card company for recent purchases. Money in credit card accounts should therefore be written as negative amounts. Here I have 2 credit cards I need to pay back in January, so I have added the negative amount I owe next to each credit card. I have not missed any payments on these credit cards, so they do not count as debt. The final step of this setup tab is filling in the calendar dates for your bills and debt. This step is very important because the bills and debts will not show up in the monthly tabs if they are not assigned a due date. It also allows the spreadsheet to place them on the bill calendar. To fill in the table, simply write the number of the day you would like to pay each bill and debt for each month. If you plan to pay your bill on January the 3rd, then write 3 under January. If you pay a bill or debt payment on the same day every month, for example, the 3rd of the month for my electricity bill, you can copy it with Ctrl+C and paste with Ctrl+V to quickly fill out all the months. With the Setup tab complete, let's move on to the Annual Budget tab. This tab is where you will create your budgets and goals for each month of your spreadsheet. As you scroll down this page, you will see sections for each of your 5 transaction types: income, bills, debt payoff, variable expenses, and savings. First, let's make this tab a little easier to deal with. If you would like to see more of the spreadsheet, you can hide the top menu with this arrow. Full screen mode will allow you to see even more of the spreadsheet, and you can enter this mode by pressing F11 on a PC or Control Command plus F11 on a Mac. Pressing the same keys will exit full screen mode. If you didn't use all the category spaces offered by the spreadsheet, you can hide empty rows by selecting them on the left, right-clicking and selecting Hide Rows. Please only do this in the Annual Budget tab and the Net Worth tab, and not in the other tabs. If you later would like to unhide the rows, you can click on the arrows on the left or select the rows around the area, right-click and select Unhide Rows. Now, let's start filling out our budgets and goals. Next to each category, there is a cell for a monthly goal or budget for the 12 months of your spreadsheet period. You can write, for example, in the income section that you expect to earn $4,500 for your salary in January. You can duplicate a cell across an entire row very quickly. Select the $sign as well as the amount cell. Use the copy option Ctrl+C and then select the rest of the cells and paste with the option Ctrl+V. The principle is exactly the same for the bills section. The debt section is different, however. If you wish to use the debt dashboard and have filled in all of your debt information in the Setup tab, good news, this table will automatically update according to your debt payoff plan. There are two ways to change the amounts in this table. The first one is to update the planned monthly payment in the Setup tab. This will update the total budgeted amounts for all the months. The second way is to go into the debt dashboard and write a positive or negative amount in this column. It will only affect the total amount for that month. I will show an example of this a bit later. If you want to put your own budget amounts without the help of the debt dashboard, then this is also totally fine. In the Setup tab, do not write anything in the debt setup section, and back in the Annual Budget tab, you can erase all the calculations and write in your own data if you want to. If you have deleted a calculation by accident or would like to restore the calculations in the cell, go down to the row called Cells to Restore Calculations. Copy the cell in this row in the same column using Ctrl+C and paste it with Ctrl+V where you want the calculations to be restored. The cell you copy from must be in the same column as the cell you paste to. To know if a cell has a calculation in it or not, select it and then check the formula bar in the top menu. If it is just a number, then there are no calculations in the cell. A cell with a calculation will look more like this. The next section is for variable expenses. You can fill this part by yourself, just like the income and bill sections. And finally, the last section is the savings section. Just like the debt section above, the spreadsheet auto-populates all the cells according to the data you wrote in the Setup tab. However, the savings section is more flexible. You can use the savings dashboard and still adjust any data directly in the cells by writing over the calculations. You can then restore the calculations the same way as in the debt section if you need to. This table has an extra feature. The background colors help you visualize the start and end dates you chose for each saving category. For example, I chose to save for Christmas gifts from January 2025 to October 2025. So the background color for those dates are yellow and the ones from November and December are gray, as they are not in the savings timeframe. There is extra information on the right side of the debt and savings tables, so you have them on hand if you want to make changes. A very important feature of this spreadsheet is that it is based on the zero-based budget principle. This means that 100% of your income needs to be allocated to the 4 other types of transactions: bill, debt payoff, variable expenses, and savings. To help you allocate all of the money available, there are totals on the top rows of this tab. This total is your income minus bills, minus debt payoff, minus variable expenses, minus savings, and the goal is to make this total equal to 0. It would mean that you allocated 100% of your budgeted income. And to make things more practical, you can move income from month to month by rolling it over to the next month. For my example, I would like to start by looking at the bigger picture. In total for the year, I have around $4,000 unallocated dollars. That is around $300 per month. What I could do is go back to the Setup tab and add either $200 extra to my monthly debt payoff, or I could add around $2,500 to one of my savings goals for the year. My priority here is paying off my debt, so I will update my planned monthly payment to $2,873, so $200 more than before. When I go back to the annual budget tab, I can see I now have around $1,500 to allocate for the year. It is now time to look at all of the months individually. I can already see that I am in the red in April and September, and there are two main options here. I could change some of the figures for those months, for example, increase my income expectations or decrease my spending budget. My other option is to use the rollover feature to move money from the previous months to those months. For April, I will choose to update my total planned monthly debt payment just for that month. To do that, I go into the debt dashboard, find the April line in the total debt overview table, and write, for example, minus 500 in the plus or minus column. I can see the budget amount for April is now $2,373. I have been careful to make sure that it stays above the minimum payment written at the top of this section, as it is very important to always at least pay the minimum payment for your debts. Back in the annual budget tab, I can see the $500 have been taken out of the first debt category in April, as this debt category is the highest priority. If I wanted to pay an extra $150 in June, I could add $150 extra for that month, and you can see the change reflected in the total planned amount. To solve September's red budget total, I have chosen to roll over money between months. By writing the amount I would like to move from one month to another as a negative value in these cells called rollover to next month, the spreadsheet automatically takes the money from this month and adds it to the next month. So I will take $180 from July, it will automatically go to August, and then I will take around $540 from August to fill in the gap in September. There is one extra cell for this rollover feature in the first month of the spreadsheet period. If I had some extra unallocated income from before starting the spreadsheet that I wanted to use this year, I could have added it to this cell as a positive value. Now, I still have extra money some months that I need to allocate somewhere, so I could allocate some extra budget towards my variable expenses. In this example, I will add $100 to my groceries, $100 to my children's budget, and $72 to my hobbies budget for January. I will then adjust the budget for the remaining months so that the total is zero for each month. Now that all the totals on the top summary are green and equal to zero, I know that I have properly budgeted my whole year. The spreadsheet will automatically update this data in all of the monthly dashboards and the annual dashboard too. With the setup and budget done, we can now move on to the next tab and actually start recording our financial transactions. The transaction tab is where you will log all of the transactions you make. This includes all of your income and all of your spending. You will also be able to make transfer between the bank accounts and pay back your credit card balance in this tab. First, we need to make sure the date format is the one you would like to use. To do this, I firstly double-click on the date cell and choose a date. The spreadsheet is set for the date format month, day, year, but you can change this if this is not your date format of choice. First, you can go into File, then Settings to set the spreadsheet in the correct country and time zone. Then click on the top of the C column, then click on the top menu option 1, 2, 3, and then either choose an already existing date format or select Custom Date and Time. You can create the right date format for you by adjusting the day, month, and year and separating them the way you would like. In this example, I changed the date format to day, month, year. Now that the date format is correct, let's log a transaction. You can simply fill in each row with information on each of your transactions. I received a salary of $4,500 on the 2nd of January. I need to add this to the Transactions tab for it to show up in the rest of the spreadsheet. I choose the type of transaction with the drop-down menu, then I choose the category. I can write a description if needed, and then the amount. The account column is to indicate to the spreadsheet where the transaction takes place. For income, this shows which account the income arrived in. I received this salary in my Chase bank account, so this is the one I will choose. When I go to my January dashboard, I can now see this amount in the income table and corresponding graphs. Bills are written exactly the same way. There is no need to write a negative amount for any of your spending transactions, as the spreadsheet already knows that all income is positive and all spending is negative. Writing a bill or debt in the Transaction tab will show the bill or debt payment as paid in the monthly dashboards, even if you over or underpay. Back in the Transactions tab, when I select an account for my spending transaction, this shows where this money was taken from, in this case, the same bank account. A sneak peek into our Accounts tab shows us that $4,500 have been deposited into my Chase bank account, and $145 was taken out of the same account to pay the electricity bill. Now I will add a debt transaction and a variable expense following the same principles. For my groceries are paid by credit card. In the Accounts dashboard, we can see the $154 of withdrawal, and this increased our credit from $2,500 to $2,654. Savings transactions are slightly different. You do not need to select an account. Without an account selected, you are simply indicated that you are allocating this amount of income to your savings, but the money stays where it is. It was designed this way because you might not wish to move money around every time you choose to allocate income to your savings. If you would like to physically transfer the savings from one account to another, you need to use the Balance feature of the Transaction tab. I allocated $150 to my emergency fund savings category, and now I would like to move this money from my Wells Fargo bank account to my Bank of America savings account. I choose the date and select Balance, then write minus $150 from the Wells Fargo bank account. This effectively takes out $150 from that bank account. And I do the same and add a positive $150 to my Bank of America savings account. These two lines correspond to a bank transfer. They are not only used for savings, but also for any bank transfers between your bank accounts or even when you take out cash. Back in the Accounts dashboard, you can see the $150 in the balance adjustments. These balance lines are also used to pay off your credit cards. I have just repaid the outstanding balance on my Chase credit card. To record this transaction, I will take $1,400 out of my Chase bank account and add the same amount to my Chase credit card. In the Accounts dashboard, you can see my current balance on my Chase credit card is zero. I have repaid my credit, and we can see in the balance adjustment column that it was taken from my Chase bank account. And those are all the types of transactions and transfers you can write down in your Transaction tab. After completing your Setup and Budget tabs, the Transactions tab will be the tab you use the most. So here are some tips and tricks to make this tab easier to deal with. You can write all of your transactions by hand if you want to, but the fastest solution is to copy and paste data from a bank statement CSV or from any other spreadsheet. To do this, you need to copy a column from the other spreadsheet, paste it in the corresponding column in the Transactions tab, and make sure to click on the pasting option, Paste Values Only, to keep the correct formatting. Continue the same way for all of the necessary columns, and then you just need to choose the categories and accounts. You can use the Ctrl plus down arrow keys to reach the last filled cell of a column to quickly reach the last transaction on the list and add more. You do not have to write your transactions in the order they come in, as you can order them by date thanks to the triangle in the date column. Click on the triangle and choose Sort A to Z. This will give you a warning, but this one you do not have to worry about. Go ahead and click OK. Your transactions will now be sorted by date. If you realize you have spent more money than planned in a category and you would like to investigate, for example, you spent $150 more than budgeted in your electronics spending category, but you don't remember why, you can filter your transactions by categories. Click on the category column triangle, click on Clear to deselect all the categories, and then select blanks and the category or categories of your choice. It is very important to select blanks, as without it, the spreadsheet will take a long time to process the information. Once selected, click OK and accept the pop-up. You can now easily see that you bought a wireless keyboard and mouse and Bluetooth earphones that month, and that is why you went over budget. Please make sure to then restore all of the transactions by clicking on the triangle, then clicking on Select All and OK. When deleting or adjusting transactions, please do not delete the whole row in one go, as the icon and all the calculations will no longer automatically update in this row. The spreadsheet will give you a warning to prevent this from happening, so simply delete in this way. This spreadsheet covers a period of 12 months, and transactions that fall out of this period should not be added to this tab. And that's it for the transaction tab. Now let's go to our monthly dashboards. All the monthly dashboards are fully automated and set up the same way. They have a summary on top showing the status of all of the transactions, as well as the amount of the income that has not been allocated yet to the other transactions. Underneath the summary are the 5 transaction sections: income, bills, debt, variable expenses, and savings, with their tables on the left and graphs on the right. You do not have to fill in anything in these tabs. They are here to show you all the data you have written in the rest of the spreadsheet. If you would like to change the size of a graph, because for example, it is not showing the names of the categories properly, then double-click in the middle of the graph and use the white boxes to resize it. The annual dashboard works just like the monthly dashboards, but it has more graphs in order to analyze the whole year. You do not need to write anything in this tab. It is there to give you a useful bigger picture of your income and spending throughout the year. The next tab is the Accounts tab, which we already saw when we went through the Transactions tab. The Accounts tab shows you all the data for your cash, bank accounts, and credit cards. You first have a summary on top, and below is a table to help you visualize all of your accounts, their amounts at the start, and the overall movements that happened to them. You can check the data against your own bank account's online statement to see if you missed something or if you need to correct something. To record and remind yourself of when you last checked each of your accounts, you can double-click in the check cell and choose the date in the calendar. There are also graphs on the right for more data analysis if you need them. The next tab we're going to look at is the Bill Calendar tab. This calendar shows you the due dates of all of your bills, as well as all of your debt payoff due dates throughout the month. The bills are in pink and the debts are in purple. To show the bills and debts calendar for a specific month, select the month on the right and write down the year below. Make sure to only choose months that fall within the spreadsheet's 12-month period. If you would like to add your payday, an event, or a task in the calendar, you have more entries at the bottom. Simply write in the descriptions and the number of the day. They will directly appear in the calendar. You will have to update these whenever you change the month of the calendar. Once a bill or debt is paid in the Transaction tab, it becomes gray in the calendar. For example, I have just paid the mortgage in April. I can see it now turned gray in the calendar. On the right, you can see graphs to indicate the amount of bills and debt that still need to be paid this month. There is also a summary listing all of the bills and debts that still need to be paid with their respective amounts. And that's it for the Bill Calendar tab. The next tab is the Saving Dashboard. It has a summary of your situation on top, an overview table, and graphs. The table shows the current status of your savings. On the right, you can see all the details for each savings category. In the detail table below, showing the data month by month, you can see that some dates have a yellow background. This means those dates are within the start date and goal date of your saving goal that you specified in the Setup tab. Like many of the others, this tab is fully automated and is there to provide an overview of your savings progress. The Debt Dashboard features an overview and a detailed analysis of all of your debts. You will first see a summary on top that will update with every new data you input into the Setup, Budget, and Transactions tab. Below this is a table that can show you the state of your debts during any of the 12 months covered by the spreadsheet. To change the month you want to view, select a month in the drop-down menu on the right and the table will automatically update. The Debt Dashboard will start by using your budgeted debt amounts to calculate your progress towards paying off your debt. Then, as you add your debt payments to the Transactions tab, it will instead use these actual payments to calculate your progress. We can see that in May, I have not yet paid my credit card debt of $810. And so the Debt Dashboard is using my budgeted amounts to calculate the balance of $5,998. However, if I decide to pay $900 instead for May, the Debt Dashboard will use this actual payment of $900 to calculate the balance, which now amounts to $5,908. This is to make sure that the Debt Dashboard adapts to your actual debt payments. Scrolling to the right will show a detailed overview of all of your debt categories. The first section you will find titled Total Debt Overview is a detailed view of all debts together, showing the total planned amounts and total actual paid amounts each month. Calendar months that have already finished will automatically turn purple. I am filming this tutorial in May, so the month of April is the last month in purple with a ticked checkbox. As we have seen in the Annual Budget tab, this section of the Debt Dashboard allows you to update your total planned monthly debt payment just for a specific month. Scrolling to the right of this summary, you can find the details for all of your debts, including their progress towards payoff and all of the planned and actual payments. This Debt Dashboard is set to start on a specific date, January 2025 in my case. But what happens if you want to start a new debt in June 2025? If you would like to add any debt, please follow this process. You do not need to remember it. You can come back to this part of the tutorial when you need to add a debt. First, use the overview table to write down the balances of all of your current debts for the month before the start of your new debt. For example, I plan to take out a new debt in June 2025. So after I input all of my debt payments for May 2025 in the Transaction tab, I record all of the debt balances for that month. Secondly, go to the Annual Budget tab and write down the monthly budgets of all debts that occurred before the start of this new debt. For me, this is from January 2025 to May 2025. To be faster, you can also take a screenshot instead of writing it down. Next, you can add your new debt in the Setup tab. When you fill in this information, don't forget the due dates at the bottom of the Setup page. Now, change the start date to that of the new debt and overwrite the starting balances to those you wrote down for the end of May 2025. And finally, go to the Annual Budget tab and overwrite the monthly budgets to those you wrote down so you can keep the budgeted amounts you had before the new debt. And that's it for the Debt Dashboard. The next and final tab is the Net Worth tab. The first step here is to fill in the cell at the top with your target net worth amount that you plan to reach at the end of the 12-month period. The sections below are split across two main areas that we will use to calculate our net worth. The first area is assets, anything you own that has monetary value, for example, cash, money in your bank accounts, real estate, or even investments. And the second part is the liabilities. Anything you owe, for example, your debts and credit card balances. Your total net worth is your assets minus your liabilities. Starting with the cash and bank accounts section of your assets, we will use the drop-down list to select all account categories that are assets. I will, for example, put my cash account and all of my bank accounts. The table will automatically fill in at the beginning of each month and update according to your data. I can then do like I did in the annual budget tab and hide the rows that I do not need to see. The other sections of the assets are properties, investments, and other assets. These tables are entirely customizable by you. You can write down all the category names and all the amounts. For example, I can write a property of $150,000 that I purchased before January 2025. We will see the mortgage for this property in the liabilities. Now let's look at our liabilities. In the first table of the liabilities section, you can use the drop-down list to select all of your credit card accounts. The next table functions the same way, but for all of your debts. You can select the debt categories and the balances will automatically update at the beginning of each month. And here we can see the mortgage we used to buy the property we listed earlier as an asset. The last liabilities table is fully customizable and you have to write the amounts by yourself in the table. Now, going back to the top of the tab, you can see all of the graphs and data have been updated. I am already at 52% of my yearly goal. The net worth tab will automatically update as you add transactions into your transaction tab, allowing you to see your net worth change over time. Thank you so much again for purchasing this spreadsheet and supporting my store. If you enjoy using this spreadsheet as much as I loved creating it, please leave me a review on Etsy or my website lowstresslife.store. And in the meantime, happy budgeting!